Welcome once again to the Edgar Ortega radio show. I try to have guests on here that should be interesting to some of you, and if you're involved in reptiles, my guest today is no exception. My guest is an icon, both in the reptile industry and in the world of field herping and reptile photography. He's an author, photographer, field herper, herpetologist, and he's the one and the only Bill Love is here with me today to talk about his new book. Bill, it's good to talk with you again.
You too, Edgar. Looking forward to this.
How's Kathy doing?
Oh, she's good. She's sitting nearby listening to all of this. She's got her new projects in the works too, so she's very much still involved in herpetoculture.
Oh, it's very good. I think first exposure to you guys was the corn snake manual, so I read through that a few times, and then and I got to meet you a few years ago. Now, I've been to your house, you've been to my house. You and Kathy have an amazing home to anyone who enjoys reptiles. You live in the middle of the Arizona desert where snakes come right up to your house, apparently, and every road is probably suitable for road cruising. Now, when Carla and I visited, you were kind enough to show us around, and I think you even pulled some cactus out of my leg. That was fun.
Yeah, we've got a few of those jumping cholla lurking around the edges of our property.
Yeah, they just jump out and get you, and then those were quite an experience for me. Now, I know you've done some traveling recently, but I have to ask you, have you been taking full advantage of the amazing reptile haven you call home there? What's it like living in Herp Central there?
Oh man, we absolutely love it. We've been here about, I guess, close to 6.5 years now, after almost 40 in Florida. So it's been quite a change. Although it was a very familiar place. I'd been out to Arizona many, many, many times herping, so I was totally familiar with the place then. Not like I am now, though. I've had some amazing times. I've met some fantastic herpers out here. And it's still new and refreshing. It kind of makes me feel like a kid again. And I go out herping, especially when I have friends to come visit. We've got some great herping starting 5 or 6 miles from home here. One of the best roads to go road cruising in the whole state. And I take everybody out that way, and we always have a good time. We always find something interesting.
All right, we'll put the GPS coordinates for that in the description, right? Yeah.
No, that's a no. But you gotta come visit me personally to see the secret road.
Yeah, the super secret road. Everybody has some. Yeah, I know, but I have no doubt that those would be quite productive. Now, were you at the International Herp Symposium and Biology of the Snakes this year?
I was to both of those symposia just recently. I think I just came back from the second one last Sunday. They were back-to-back great meetings. Yeah. There were close to 200 people at each one of them. And I got to see oodles of old friends, make some new ones. The monsoon season started right on cue, and it rained almost every day down there and brought the herps, especially the amphibians, out in mass.
Yeah, I don't think those are planned by accident in the timing of when they're out there. I know everybody wants to do their thing, and then everybody wants to get out there. I spoke with Bill O'Shea a while back, or Mark O'Shea, and yes. And I was talking to Bill, and I thought Bill. I spoke with Mark.
Blood brothers.
I spoke with Mark, and he was looking forward to getting out there, and it looks like he had lots of fun. Everybody's taking pictures with him, and we were thinking of going. We had the opportunity to go. But I think we decided to limit our adventures to what we had planned, so we didn't do anything too spontaneous, especially after Carla had to go back to work soon. But it sounds like it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Like I said, those meetings took place at about 5 hours from home. So I went down for the first one, came home to take care of some animals and other chores, and even put in a day or two of work, yuck, and then went back for the biology of snakes. And I guess I know one of the reasons we're talking here is because of the book. I wasn't expecting that book to arrive till about the middle of August. And as I was driving down for the second symposium, Biology of Snakes, got a call from my good friend Peter Lindsay, said, "Your books have arrived." So at the second symposium, I was able to offer the new book.
Oh, very cool. That's exciting for you, and it must have been fun to unpack those things.
Well, yeah, that's not the fun part, but the fun part is showing it off to people and having people buy it and comment on it. And obviously it's my whole life in a book there. So how can I not be excited about that?
And you're personalizing every one, it looks like so far. Everybody's having fun showing you pictures of the book when they get it in the mail.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those here just a few minutes ago. I just barely had a chance to look since working all night. Yeah, every one that gets ordered from us, I personalize it at least with the name of the person. If not, and of course, if I know them or have done something with them, I personalize it even further.
That's very good. You're always going on trips, and that's kind of what your book's about. You recently went to Australia not too long ago, didn't you?
Yeah, that was just this past February.
Yeah, yeah. Now that wasn't your first time, right? For those who have never had the opportunity to visit and herp Australia, give us an idea of how your trip went. Let us live through you, and then we'll start talking about your adventures in your book.
Sure. That was actually my fourth trip to Australia. I think the first one was back in the winter of 93, 94. So my trips have spanned a few years there. I have a really, really good friend over there named Adrian Hemans, and he runs the biggest reptile show in Australia. It takes place on the outskirts of Sydney. So he's had me over there the last couple times as a guest speaker and just a pal to bum around with, and we've gone herping and usually off to some far corner of the country. On this last one, I wanted to go to an area that I'd never been to before, which was kind of, oh, it's a little hard to describe. We drove north to Brisbane, up the coast of Australia, and then we went in a northwesterly direction out into the outback. And I should mention I was along with three other friends, Adrian, my friend Dave Kaufman, who I'm sure you know, filmmaker, great guy. He flew over to coincide his trip with us. And then my other Aussie mate, Ewan Edwards, up in the Brisbane area. So the four of us teamed up on renting a vehicle and went out into the outback for about the next 9 days or so. And boy, it sure is a good thing that we rented a vehicle and didn't use one of our own.
Maybe nobody would be willing to volunteer their own vehicle in that case.
Well, if they saw the big dents on the front, we hit two different kangaroos on different nights.
Who's driving?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that kid jarred us all awake. And you're thinking, how could you be so clumsy? But I mean, if you've ever had an experience with deer over in the United
They
States,
probably just dart out in front, huh?
yeah, there was no way to avoid it. They dart right in front of you when you're zooming along at like at 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, the damage was, well, it was moderate, but it didn't stop us.
Yeah, Australia is pretty weird. I mean, I've heard that the population is so spread out. I mean, it's about the size of the U.S. in far as the space it covers, but the population, I think, is about the same as Los Angeles or Southern California. So it's a really interesting place, isn't it?
That's about it. Everybody's on the coasts, so when you go inland to the great outback, yeah, there's just little podunk towns scattered around out there. Really friendly people and cool places, but you don't see a whole lot of the large brand restaurants and other businesses scattered around. It's kind of little mom and pop places, which I enjoy immensely. It makes it a lot more interesting to travel around there. And sometimes you're driving like for 2 hours in between any sort of civilization.
Now, what's up? I mean, do you go when it's hot or when it's cold? I've heard there's like a hole over the ozone layer right over Australia. So how's that work? How's that work? Do you got
Well,
to
I
lather
can
on the
tell you,
sunscreen?
it was hot and steamy in February, which of course is like middle of summer over there, down below the equator. And of course, herpers tend to make their trips then because just like monsoon season hitting here in Arizona right now, which is like the best time to be out here, February is a great time to be in Australia because it's kind of near the middle or the latter part of summer. So the animals are active. There's lots of baby animals around too because everything has been hatched or born recently. So it increases your chances of herp encounters tremendously.
Yeah, I'm sure you timed that right. I mean, I've never heard any regrets of people who've gone to Australia. That sounds like a lot of fun. And it's adventures like this that have filled your life with great experiences and stories to tell, like these. And you have a new book chronicling just that. It's an autobiography, I understand, called Reptile Odyssey: Adventures of a Herpetologically-Oriented Life. Tell us, when did you decide to go back through all of your adventures and write them down to tell your story?
Wow. I say it probably happened 3 to 4 years ago. There was definitely an inspiration to do this. and it was from my friend and colleague Craig Trumbauer, who now lives back in Tallahassee, Florida. He wrote a pair of books in 2013 and 15 called Even More Than Snake Hunting. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the first one was called More Than Snake Hunting, and the second one, following it 2 years later, was called Even More Than Snake Hunting.
Got a
And
follow up, yeah.
basically, yeah, they're great books. They can be ordered through Eco Publishing down in Rodeo, New Mexico, Bob Ashley's publishing company, who non-coincidentally is the same one who published my book. But when I saw Craig's books and read them through cover to cover, I enjoyed them immensely. His experiences in the field and just growing up as a herper. Craig's like 7 or 8 years older than me, so he's had a lot of the same experiences. And I was thinking, wow, I should do a book like this someday. And so those two books were definitely inspiration. I dug back through all my old diaries and everything to try to find all the best stories and pack my book with them. So my book is it's all the highlights of my life and all the best stories. I've seen other people's books that are like, I went there and I caught this, and I went there and I caught that. Well, there's some of that in there, but there's going to be a little more than that involved. There's going to be a special highlight to the story, or something funny or tragic or painful that happened on the way. So I think everybody will find some real enjoyment in all these little tales.
No, it sounds really cool that you could go back and do that. Did you ever go through your journals and say, "Oh, that just reminded you of a story you maybe didn't think to put in the book," and you go back and you write things down, and then you read them and remember them again?
Yeah, there were definitely a few of those that came to my attention. A lot of the best stories, if you've ever hung out here with me, in fact, if you ever read a copy of this, Edgar, you'll probably remember that I told you a few during our couple visits. But obviously, there's always highlight stories that stick in your mind, and you tend to repeat them. Um, yeah, Craig in his books mentioned that a lot because whenever he's hurt with friends, they almost get tired of hearing the stories after a while. So that's probably going to be the case with mine too. But there's no repeats, and lots of fun times. It's hard to really summarize them very easily, but they basically follow my life. The book does follow an autobiographical format, and from the time I was just a child in New Jersey, catching my first herps, and I feel like I remember those stories pretty well, and I've detailed them and try to write them in a very fun and interesting way.
Yeah, you said 3 years ago. I was surprised of that. Some people at work decide they're gonna write their autobiography and they spend years and years, working on that. It sounds like you pounded it out pretty quick. What was the writing schedule like for that?
Well, I guess I produced the whole book in about a year and a quarter,
Mm.
but I did take a lot of notes, I have to admit. But on the other case, the old brain is not too foggy yet. Maybe that'll catch up with me someday, but right now there's not any cobwebs up there yet. So, and I did write the stories very accurately and truthfully. I dislike people who embellish stuff. I hate when people, and I can see it so easily sometimes when they brag things up or they extend the sizes of the animals they saw. That kind of bugs me. So I really avoided that, and all my stories are as truthful and accurate as I recall them. And as I say in there, I think that's pretty darn well at this point yet.
No fishing stories then. Okay.
Well, like I said, if I did, I didn't try to exaggerate the size or the color or whatever of what I found.
Or how many? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No, that's really interesting. You're talking about stories, hearing them over and over again. I'm sure I've heard a couple times, and then we'll enjoy reading it again in your book. Seems like all you old Herper guys love telling the stories, and you're good at telling them. If you hang out with Tom Crutchfield more than once, you'll hear the same story again, but it's never boring. I think Bob Applegate did that. He told the same story a few times the same day. That was fun.
Well, there's two names you mentioned who both really need to produce something like this. I know Tom
I
Crutchfield's
know, right? Yeah.
Tom's thinking about it already. I haven't heard that Bob has actually got anything like that in the works yet, but I can tell you a volume from either one of those guys and lots of others too would be instant sellers, and I would certainly pick those up immediately. And at this point in my life, I'm getting older now. I'm 61 years old. I have to admit, I don't get out and beat the bushes as much as I used to. Like I said, mostly when friends come to visit now. So reminiscing in the good old times through the the stories and the photos of your old friends, I find immensely pleasurable. And I don't want to make it sound like it's just an old fogies club, though, sitting there reading each other's stories, because I think young people would find a lot to learn from all of those names you mentioned, and hopefully
Hmm.
my book too, because I certainly chronicle a lot of the mistakes and dumb things I did, and let those be kind of warnings to the next generations.
Yeah, Tom and Bob need to put some books out. Yeah, I didn't even think about it, but they've got all those great stories they tell them so often. I think it would just kind of flow out of them and fill a couple of volumes. That'd be interesting.
Oh, I've heard lots of stories from both of them. They're both personal friends of mine, and I didn't pick those two folks out, but hearing all their stories was certainly part of the whole influence to do this. Both of those folks are pictured in my book. Tom gets a little more coverage because I grew up in Florida and hung around there. I used to work there. I think I started out cleaning cages at Tom's shop and helping him expand his mailing list back in the old days. So I was around the birth of Herpetologically Incorporated and watched it progress and evolve through a couple other iterations. So I've spent a lot of time with Tom, and it'll show in the book.
Yeah, he likes posting, old stories and pictures with friends, and you're in quite a few of them, and so it's good to hear that he's in the book as well. So we look forward to seeing those stories. Now, one of the things you enjoy most is not just finding reptiles, but you enjoy photographing them. We flew you out here a while back, and you gave a talk for the Central Valley Herpetological Society here in Northern California on reptile photography. And it's certainly one of your passions, and I imagine that an autobiography by Bill Love will be giving us plenty of photographs. Am I right?
You're absolutely right on that. The book has about 215 color photos, and of course, the cream of the crop are in there. And I was pleasantly surprised during the writing of this, and I was going back and forth with my editor, Russ Gurley, out in Oklahoma. And at some point, I said, well, I'm holding back a little bit. I'm a little afraid that the book will get too expensive with all this color, because I was of the mindset that, if you use too many color pictures, it ups the price a lot. And he said, Russ said, not with the folks we publish with. He says, it's just the page count. He says, you can put as many photos as you want in there. And it's like, wow, the light bulb went on. And I really started digging back. And I had some oldies slides, even a few that my father took of me, that are, going on close to 45, 50 years ago and still in really good shape. So I went crazy with it. And the book is full of color photos. The whole book, it runs right about 301 pages with, said, about 215 or so color photos in it. So, yeah, it's very colorful. I enjoy photography immensely. My dad was the biggest influence on me, but so were a bunch of other good photographers along the way. And I talk about the people that influenced me. Yeah, it was a real pleasure to talk to your group. I see some of the folks probably got some good hints from it. Out there in Central Valley, there's two herp photographers in particular that stand out in my mind. Marissa Ishimatsu
Mm-hmm.
is certainly a fantastic photographer. I love seeing her pictures.
Yeah.
He's got it down well. And then you've got Chad Lane, kind of up and coming too, and he's been doing some fantastic stuff, especially just recently. I've seen a lot of his great photos, and he's getting to be quite the shutterbug too. So I probably forgetting to mention a few other people out there, but those two stand out in my head right away.
No, those are great. They're good photographers. They've both spoken at CVHS for us. I remember when Chad was, we were just out there with our little point and shoot cameras. Digital cameras were just getting started out trying to photograph rattlesnakes or whatever, taking pictures of each other. And so he's come a long way, especially he's got great equipment and he puts out some good pictures. That's really cool. Now, of the pictures you put in the book, obviously you had to sort through a lot of pictures. I mean, how did you choose what photographs to include? Are they photographs relevant to the stories you're telling, or do you highlight some of your photography as well? Is it all field herping, or do you give some of your favorite studio shots, if you will? How do you pick the photos you put in your book?
Well, I think the pictures that made it in are the ones that are the most memorable to me, the ones I cherish the most. Certainly, some of my best friends are all shown in there, and then some of my best actual photographs are sprinkled through it too, to kind of spread it out, and I guess make it not just a bunch of faces. But I think the ultimate criterion for deciding was, is there a good story that kind of accompanies this? And a lot of the stories do have accompanying photos because, as you probably noticed when I came over to visit, I always tote my camera along, and I think we snapped a few pictures out in your front yard that time. I, I always like to have my camera along, and when I see something developing like a good time, I think, and I want to remember that, and maybe someday when the cobwebs start creeping in, I won't remember as well. I don't know, but I want to have a good photo to remind me. So I've used all my favorite photos in there, and at some point, I think I got pretty much everything I wanted in there. Obviously, I give praise to the people I like a lot, which is mostly what the book's about. But there was a few bad eggs that crept into my life too, and although I didn't name them in particular, I talk about them, and I think some people will figure out who I'm talking about.
Maybe an addendum or something. We never got put in there.
Well, I didn't. I don't want to get sued or anything. So the bad people just get talked about, not actually named.
Now you have actually. We're talking about the presentation you gave, sticking on the photography side of it. You give a great presentation on how to improve your reptile photography, be it in the vivarium or outside. You give tips on composition, and you give a really great presentation. You have tons of slides to show. If anyone ever has the chance to hear Bill give that presentation, go out there if he's talking at a Herp Society or wherever. Are you still doing that presentation at Herp Societies?
Oh yeah, I've got about 7 or 8 different presentations I give, but I have to admit my herp photography one is probably my favorite because I guess I put the most passion into that. I've been photographing stuff for just about 50 years, and I started with little simple Polaroids and point and shoot Kodak Instamatics and stuff. I've got some horrendous pictures. I almost put one of my worst photos in there just to show people. I think I probably showed it during the presentation of a couple garter snakes on my driveway, and they looked like 2 little hairs on this bright white background. It's the most horrible photo I have ever taken, but it was one of my first, and you're thinking, I know some people say, oh, Bill, like you've always been such a great photographer. Well, not always, everybody's got to start out humble somewhere and learn the ropes.
It's a reference point, yeah.
I thought about sticking it in there, but there were so many other good ones. I decided not to put a really crummy, fuzzy photo in there just to point that out. But I like to give that presentation and several others. I still travel around to herp groups when they invite me. And like I said, that's probably the one I put the most passion into.
Yeah, sometimes I get all these pictures from people to identify a snake, and you'd think they took it with like a cereal box with a hole in it or something.
Oh, I get so many of those, and it's like I look at them, and it's like, do my glasses need to be cleaned or what? So,
yeah.
But you do your best, and I ask them to try to take it from a couple different angles, but mainly try to focus it. That would help a lot. But I do my best, and most of the pictures are identifiable. I get lots and lots of those.
It's hard to communicate sometimes because we maybe assume a lot of things in people because you do photography. We're always taking pictures of animals and this and that, but so we know what to do. But it's just simple stuff like not holding it from above or just getting down, getting a better view, or just putting it somewhere that looks more natural. Just simple things like that, turning your flash on during the day that people don't think about. And he gives really great information, just little tips like that, and he goes more into detail on other stuff. If you can catch his presentation on herp photography, we should talk more about that. That's a lot of fun. Now, one last question on the photos. How has the development of like the digital camera influenced your photography? Obviously, you talked about using slide film and film. How has that changed things in herp photography for you?
Well, it's had a major impact, that's for sure. I waited a little longer than a lot of folks to go digital because I was waiting for the quality to get up there to the 35 millimeter slides I used to take on Kodachrome film. I think one of my first comments about that is that growing up taking slides, as my father did before me, you learn the basics of photography because you have to. You can't afford to do it otherwise. Back when I was shooting slides, it was like every time I clicked my finger, it was like 35 cents, 35 cents, 35 cents. It was about what it cost between the film and the developing and everything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I still encourage people to take multiple shots, but wow, some people they don't quite understand, and they just kind of click, 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 click. And then, worst of all, they put all of those pictures up, instead of picking out the best one when you weren't blinking, or when the best one when the tongue of the snake is out and the fork spread at the end and it looks really good. So one of those basic things I ask is take lots of pictures, and I enjoy seeing them, but cull them out. Don't put up all your junky pictures and figure, oh well, I'll give everybody a chance to see all my pictures. We're all busy nowadays. We don't want to sort through a dozen pictures that are almost the same. We want to see your best shot, and that just leads into one of those things I always talk about. But in the back of my Reptile Odyssey book, I do have like a dozen of the basic points that I talk about in my herp photography presentation. So they get repeated there too, because I do feel an obligation to help people become better photographers.
It certainly afforded us to be quite liberal with the snapshots we take, and lets us practice more. So there's no excuse for being a bad photographer, with some practice, especially with the digital camera. And it gives us immediate feedback. That's a cool thing. Not only that, you can edit the picture right there, even on some cameras.
Yeah, you can do that. I like to wait till I get home and I put them on the bigger screen, and where I can look at them in Photoshop and Lightroom, and maybe tweak them a little bit. Another one of those things I see people do all the time, it just seems so basic, is to get your subject centered in the photo. Now, that doesn't mean every subject has to be right in the middle of the picture, but I see so many pictures when the animal's off in one corner somewhere and the rest of it's just a bunch of grass or sand. And I'm thinking, like, you couldn't tell to get the animal right in the middle somewhere, or at least mostly centered. It's kind of funny. It just seems like such a basic thing, but I don't know. I guess it's just something I learned along the way, like everything else.
Yeah, everybody's got their phones now too. I didn't think of that. I don't remember if that was in your presentation, but everybody's got a camera in their pocket now, and the quality of the phone pictures are getting better and better.
Oh
So
boy,
it's
they sure are. I see some amazing stuff. It doesn't mean just because you've got a phone that takes a quality picture that you're going to get a good picture, but at least the pixels and the clarity is pretty good. And of course, I'm competing with all of that now because there's so many gajillions of pictures being taken now. Of course, there's some really good ones coming out, even of people that are not adept at taking a good photo. They manage to get a few good ones. And another one of the pieces of advice is, like, if you can set your camera to take a really large megapixel picture, do that, please. Don't take those little snapshots. I mean, I've sat with so many friends at restaurants, and they're whizzing through these little postage stamp sized pictures. I'm like, look at this, look at that I saw. And of course, then I have my glasses out and try to focus on it. And they've taken them, like, man, I've got like 4 billion pictures stored in this phone, but they're all at such small size that they're not reproducible in like a book or a magazine at a very high resolution. So, maybe it's better to only have 5,000 pictures in your phone, but have them high resolution. So if you get that really special one that you want to sell it at a reptile show or have it published in a magazine, then it'll be high enough quality to look good there.
Oh, that's great. And great tips in your presentation. Great photography. That's part of your book. It's part of your life the last several decades. Give us a sampling of the area that this book covers. I imagine it includes many of the places you've been to, stories from your adventures, like you said. What are some of the locations you visited that you talk about in this book?
Well, I certainly go through a lot of the places that have highlighted my life. Some of the countries, of course, Madagascar gets first billing because, aside from the United States, it's the place I visited the most. I've been there 12 separate times. But I've been to Australia. I've been to Mauritius. Mauritius is a little island in the Indian Ocean where the dodo birds used to live. That was quite an adventure in itself. I've been to Peru. I've been to New Caledonia. And then I've had Mexico has provided some fantastic excitement. And then even some good times down in Russia. And of course, I talk about Florida and Arizona and many trips across Texas and California too. So I've kind of chronicled all of them in chapters and talked about the best times, and got pictures representing each of those places too. So again, the book does follow an autobiographical format and a chronological format too, until I get near the back, in which case I tackle some of I kind of delve away from that format and tackle some of the hot issues in herpetology and herpetoculture today, and give my informed opinion about them. And then I've even stuck in a little chapter in the back where I kind of delved away a little further and talked about my children. Although a lot of the stories are reptile oriented. I don't have any biological kids, but I've got a whole bunch that I call my kids that I've sort of informally adopted. Most of them were exchange students from various places around the world, and I have some great tales to tell about them too. So it's got a little bit of everything. And again, I think some people might be thinking, well, like, well, Bill Love's Life, I don't really care what Bill Love did, but I'm hoping they'll at least consider thinking like, well, his experiences have spanned the whole format of everything going on in herps, because I've been a reptile dealer, I've been a breeder, a lecturer, a photographer, and I've worn many hats, and I've tried to include them all in there. So I think the tales will be inspirational to a lot of people who might not expect them to be on the surface.
Oh, that's really amazing. Was it your cat or mine?
My cat.
Mine comes out here every now and then. I shut myself in the room here, and then he doesn't like that I shut him out, so I have to get up sometimes and so I don't know if it was. I know we both like cats. So.
Yeah, well, your microphone's good if it was picking him up. I've got three of them here, but he's the talkative one, and he's wondering like why I'm not paying attention to him right now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think you played with my cat. You played fetch with him.
Oh, I'm sure I did.
Now, speaking of people, you go around, we think of ourselves as reptile people. We love going out looking for reptiles. The animals are a great thing. When we go out, we discover all these different countries and the things we can find there. But a big part of it, I don't think your stories would be anywhere near as interesting about the animals without the people you connect with in those places or the adventures you share with people. You mentioned Tom, but through the years you've met and worked with a lot of great people, which I'm sure you mentioned in the book, like you've said, in the reptile world. So give us kind of a sampling of some of the memorable names of those you've shared stories about in this book.
Oh, boy. There are a lot of them. There's a lot of names and a lot of pictures in there. And one of the things I should mention is I feel a little guilty about because I have so many friends I've met over the years that I wasn't able to include everybody in the book. There are a couple collages right at the back where I would just put a lot of people's faces on there just to get them in there somehow because, all those friends are very cherished. But it definitely boiled down to having some particular little adventure with them when they got into actual stories. Let's see, there were so many great people out there. How about Ernie Wagner up in he was in the Seattle, Washington area. I think he's moved south since then. But back in the late 70s, I traveled around with a reptile exhibit called The Living Jungle. And I have a whole chapter about that, too. That's where I met my wife, Kathy, and who was actually my boss at the beginning, and later my partner in both business and in life.
She's still the boss.
I'm sorry, what?
Is she still the boss?
Well, I think that's a 50-50 deal now.
You guys can fight for it. There you go.
Well, we were up in Portland, Oregon, showing our exhibit one night, and after the mall closed, we used to show it in indoor malls and pull it into one of the main corridors. So after the mall closed, of course, we had to take care of the animals, and it was feeding night, and we had acquired some frozen rodents and chicks, and we had an employee who just absentmindedly put a small turtle back into an exhibit with his hand that also featured a large Mexican West Coast rattlesnake. That's Crotalus basiliscus. And it was just one of those kind of things who just kind of had a brain fart there, and he lifted the turtle back in over his back and put his hand in there, and the snake reached forward for the next meal and tagged him. Well, Portland, Oregon does not have any venomous snakes in the immediate area, so the hospital there does not stock antivenom. And again, by the time this has all happened, it's probably 10 or 10 o'clock at night, and suddenly we need to get our pal Frank, to a hospital somewhere. And get some antivenom. So after we found out that they don't stock it in Portland, the call went out to Seattle to Ernie Wagner, who was the curator of reptiles at the Woodland Park Zoo up there. And so he was rousted out of bed and to go get some antivenom from the zoo's collection. And they had to get an Army helicopter to fly it down to Portland. My other partner, Tom Vermersch, took Frank into the hospital there. And while we kind of closed things up, we bagged a lot of the venomous reptiles that were on exhibit, thinking, oh my gosh, there's going to be a media circus in the morning. When the word gets out and we're all going to be sent around like, what are you talking about? We don't have any venomous snakes here. We're just trying to avoid, you know how the media just loves bad publicity. And so And then I think Tom finally came back about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and woke us up. We were camping, and he says, "Oh, somebody might have to call Frank's parents in the morning and tell what happened," like as if he was going to die during the night. So, oh my gosh, like you could sleep after that. By the time we got in there at 8 or 9 in the morning to see Frank, he's sitting there smiling. His arm's a little swollen. He's trying to pinch the nurse. He's having a good old time. And I mean, it was so nice to see him smiling and thinking, okay, he's not going to
He's
die.
pinching the nurse.
Yeah. Frank was quite the ladies' man. And so anyway, so we realized Frank was he had a little swelling, and we went up. So we were able to comfortably leave Frank at the hospital for a few days and go up and visit Ernie up in Seattle and thank him for all the extra help, get the tour of the zoo and the whole bit. So that's one of the stories I chronicle in detail there. Joe Laszlo, who was the curator at San Antonio Zoo in Texas, and we had some good times with Joe because we were based in San Antonio. And when we get back after, say, several months of traveling and meeting people and taking photos, Joe would say, like, "Oh, who's doing what? Who's been breeding what? What new ideas did you see?" And he'd come over that night or have us over at the zoo at night and let me photograph animals. And he's like, "Just be careful when you open those cages." I mean, I was in my early to mid 20s then, much less experienced. And Joe was incredible about letting me photograph things. We fed the vampire bats one night, and it's like, wow, I'd never seen that before. So Joe was just a powerhouse of the certainly one of the godfathers of herpetoculture. So those are two guys that stand out, but there's oodles more stories than that, and I just can't give them all away here.
No, no, of course. We just kind of want to get a little bit of sampling of everything in there. Talk to me about the writing process. For years, I read your articles in, I guess it was Reptiles Magazine and Care Guides, and you have information like that on your website, and books about reptile care, things like that. How was this book different than, say, writing? The process of it, writing like a care manual or something like that. I mean, did you get more enjoyment out of going back through all your stories instead of just spitting out facts like that? I imagine it's quite different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, here, I think the key word was trying to insert my passion for everything about this hobby and industry into this work. When I write, a care book or something like that, I try not to make it very dry either. I want people to enjoy reading it. I want the text to flow and be exciting and everything. But basically, when you're writing something factual, the point is to get the facts out, because not everybody necessarily wants to be entertained as much as they want to be informed. So, when you're writing a factual thing like, the corn snake, Elaphia guttata, I'm still hung on the old scientific name, Anthropus guttatus, is a medium-sized snake that attains about 4.5 to 5 foot in length and eats mice. I mean, it's like, it gets so boring, Or like every book I see about Madagascar, not every book, but the Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world, and it's 1,000 miles long. Like, yeah, that's all true, but it's boring. I try to make it amp up the excitement and make it a lot more fun and interesting to read. And certainly in the case of this book, I've written it in a kind of an exciting kind of a way. I try to leave people hanging at the end of one paragraph, like wanting to jump into the next one to find out what happened. And I definitely try to make it fun. And I guess I got to take the opportunity to hype another project here that's going to happen very, very soon. Is I've tackled writing a fictional novel, and it's called The Gecko's Smile.
Fictional, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't expect that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do give it a little plug in the back of this book.
Oh, cool.
But I started this project like at least 12 to 15 years ago. And I got this idea that kind of just leaped in my head one night after a long, tiresome hike. And I can't even summarize it very easily, but it's an action, adventure, mystery, and evolving love story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've never written fiction like this before, but I said I've been working on this over a dozen years, and it's basically in the very, very final tweaking phases right now. A friend is gonna finance the publishing of it, and anybody who likes herps, it sounds like it's a herp novel. It's not really a herp novel. It's an action adventure mystery novel, but of course there's herps in it because as anybody in the writing industry will tell you, write about what you
Right, what you
know.
know, yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously, there's a type of gecko that's going to have an important part of it, but it's not really just about reptiles. It's not going to be the kind of novel that you got to be a hardcore reptile geek to enjoy. I'd like to think that most anybody would enjoy this, and I wrote it very much like imagining a great movie. And I think if this ever gets to that point, and somebody decides to make a movie out of it, if you liked Indiana Jones movies and Quigley Down Under and Crocodile Dundee and movies like that, I think you'll enjoy this one immensely. And I thoroughly believe there's going to be copies, hard paper copies available by Christmas.
Well, that is exciting. So we're talking about this book, and we're already getting you ready for the next. It'll be the next. It'll be the next Da Vinci Code. Who knows?
Oh,
Now,
that would be wonderful.
is the protagonist modeled after Bill Love?
Uh, yeah, there's a lot of me in that character. Kind of a young, exciting, more slender me.
More slender. You. Oh, that's funny. Um, let's move on here to talk about the reptile industry because you're one of those people that there's people that are involved in the science of things. You think of people like Mark O'Shea. We talked about him earlier, and then there's the keepers. Like Bob Clark. He's known for his reptiles that he breeds and keeps. So he's known as a herpetoculturist. You kind of got one foot in both those worlds. Talk to me about how you've seen the reptile industry and even field herping experiences develop for you and what you've heard from others and change since you got started. I mean, guide us through the evolution of it all up to today and how it's changed.
Yeah, it certainly has changed. Back when I was a young tyke, taking my first steps into the edge of the woods in New Jersey, which happened to be only just a block away from my house, so I was very fortunate in even though living so close to New York City, I mean, I could see New York City right across the bay. I still had a sizable patch of woods to explore, and there were things like box turtles and garter snakes there that I stumbled upon very early on. So my first experiences with reptiles, besides maybe movies about monsters and things, which I love and still love, they involved the catching and keeping of local animals. So box turtles were by far and away my favorite animals because they were abundant in the woods when I was a child
You
there.
can catch them, yeah.
Yeah, I used to pick them up. I used to go in the woods with my friends all the time. We played army and things, and as often as not, I would find a box turtle early on and like, oh, sorry guys, I'll catch up with you later. I got to take this home. And I had quite a colony of box turtles, which of course are one of the most beautiful turtles in the world, in my opinion. And every one looks slightly different. I've even included a page of my early notes in there, a couple pages actually, in the book, showing the way I wanted to be a professional herpetologist. And I described probably the book that had the greatest influence on me of all was Roger Conant's 1958 field guide in the Peterson Field Guide series to reptiles and amphibians of the eastern United States. When I saw that book, oh my gosh, I fell in love. I spent almost all my summer allowance on it, which was, I think that summer was $5. Yeah, the book was like $3.98. So, but it was worth it, every bit of it. And it had range maps and information about all those animals. And I must have been about 11 years old when I got that. Not back in '58. I mean, this was back in the late '60s when I acquired that book. And I wanted to be the kind of person that could write a book like that someday. And I started making little range maps in the ponds in New Jersey as I imagined them in my mind laid out. And I took notes about what my animals were eating, whether one liked earthworms or one liked bread. Yeah, I used to feed them bread back then. But anyway, we all have to start somewhere. So my first experiences were catching wild herps and keeping them. And I think that was a very positive thing. I feel bad for so many people growing up today that don't have access to places they can do that. And what probably bothers me even more is the trend by some of these pseudo-conservation groups. I say pseudo because I think they're more interested in lining their wallets than they are in really preaching conservation. That they'll say like, oh, like don't ever take an animal out of the wild. It's horrible. It's the worst thing you can do. these animals will just die in captivity. The Humane Society of the United States, that's the worst one for this, big bloated organization that's trying to scare everybody while they just get richer themselves. But so right off the bat, when you say like, oh, never take an animal out of the wild, I cannot agree with that. Of course, a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford to go out and buy their first pet herp, but now they're being convinced like I can't even take a garter snake home. I can't take a gopher snake and put it in a cage. It won't live because the PETA or somebody says, oh, like it's horrible. Uh, it's true nowadays that captive bred reptiles have become very prevalent, and of course, I always steer somebody toward that if it's within their range and their financial situation to acquire a captive bred reptile. They'll probably do a lot better for them, but to imply that there's no hope of keeping a wild animal in a cage, and again, I don't think people should go out and keep animals that are endangered or becoming rare, but something like a garter snake over the whole United States, they're pretty common, pretty much wherever they're found, even as far as I've heard, in the San Francisco area. But we won't get into that one. But so okay, where else was I going with that? Clue me in. What else did I miss?
We're talking about how the reptile industry's changed.
Yes. Well, the prevalence of captive bred animals in the whole arena has changed it immensely because nowadays, I mean, back when I was a kid, you could maybe if you were lucky find a wild caught animal in a pet store, and there were certainly no reptile specialty shops. I'm talking like in the 1960s as I was growing up. Uh, so now you can go into almost any pet store and you can find specifically a large reptile shop in most of the bigger cities anymore. So that has boosted herpetoculture and herpetology in general in a big positive way. And I think it's also taking the pressure off wild animals. Of course it is. I mean, I see a few people still arguing against this, but it doesn't even make sense to me. Obviously, a lot of those kids, if they can go out and find an animal in the pet store, and they might bring it home in a deli cup, but and with all the little store-bought things to help it keep it going nowadays, which is great. You can buy every piece of cage and cage equipment and food for all your herps now in a lot of these shops, and it's expanded the hobby tremendously. And now what I see is a lot of those people that have gotten into their first leopard gecko or corn snake or bearded dragon, now they're gaining a greater appreciation of animals out in the field. And more and more, I see a lot of the people that go out field herping now go out with a camera in hand. And it might be a nice cell phone, or it might be a fancy 35 millimeter Canon or Nikon, but they're going out just to try to see these animals, observe them, and take pictures of them, post them on Facebook or whatever their favorite social media site is. So I see the trend. I think it's a very positive trend, and I see the hobby booming ahead and fueled by all the captive bred animals that are available, and yet appreciating those out in the wild. So that's probably the biggest overall impression I've gotten of the evolution of the hobby and the industry.
Yeah, it's changed a lot in the last even 10 years. It's been pretty amazing. I saw that Tom Crutchfield shared an excerpt from your book. I think he took a picture of it, and that's where I read it, where you mentioned social media. Talk to me about how social media and about what you think of social media connected to the reptile world and what you get out of it when 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 we're looking at that as far as the reptile people connecting and putting their ideas out there goes. I think that's what you mentioned in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to admit, I'm a Facebook user. I haven't delved into some of the other Instagrams and things like that. I've had lots of invitations to do so. Facebook is enough of a time consumer, but I don't want to make that sound like a negative thing. I love Facebook. I think it's the greatest thing that's ever come along because I love staying interconnected with my friends, and I love seeing the new exciting things they're doing, whether it's breeding a new herp that's never been bred before, or breeding a morph of something new. And I love seeing what they do in the field. Well, I'm tempted again to name some people, but there's some people out there that when I see their name pop up with a new post, it's like, wow, I'm going to check this out because I know they put quality stuff out there that I want to see. And and I hear the news, whether it's good news or bad news. People put links to the latest achievements and or the negativities or whatever. I discard a lot of the negative stuff, but I glance at a lot of it just a little bit. I want to know what's going on. But I think Facebook has just expanded the whole herpetological universe by letting people interconnect. And I think it's an absolutely wonderful thing. You've got to learn to manage it carefully. So a few of the naysayers, like, oh my gosh, why would I want to put all my trash on the line? Well, don't. Don't put the stuff out there. Don't put anything out into space that you don't want to come back to haunt you. I have a particular story about that in my book, too, where I made that mistake early on. And it did come back to nip me in the butt a little bit. But anyway, you got to learn somewhere along the way. So basically, enjoy Facebook for the good stuff. Ignore all the negativity. As I said, I think I know which quote you're talking about in the book, that it's allowed people who are not doing fun and interesting things to try to just throw out their opinions and knock other people. So when I see too much of that, I just kind of put those people on hold or dump them completely, or at least put it where I don't see their posts, because I get tired of that. I love herpetoculture and herpetology in many different facets, and I don't want to see all these people dumping on it because they're not sharp enough to set their Facebook settings to avoid that stuff.
Yeah, it seems like people used to tell their close friends things, and now they're just kind of putting it out there. Take a picture of a rash, wanting it identified or something.
Yeah, what they had for breakfast. I mean, that's cool if you're a chef or you're really into cooking. That's one thing, but it's like, like ham and eggs. Yeah. I had that too. Big deal.
Yeah, you remember back when we used to take pictures of our food with film cameras, develop it, and then share it with our friends? You remember? No, me neither. The point
is, I
is,
don't really remember that. I don't think I ever did that. But,
exactly. That's my point. Now, what do you want people to get out of this book? What do you hope each reader takes with them after they read it?
Well, I hope they find some bit of it that inspires them in some way or another. I've had a really fun life, and like I said, it's not over yet or anything, but I've gotten to enjoy and travel and meet interesting people and just do a lot of fun stuff. And I hope that I've touched upon some aspect of almost all of those things in my book to let people, it's a big, bright, wonderful world out there. And I'm afraid it's getting a bit overcrowded now. The population explosion of human beings is behind virtually every problem going on out there. We're taxing the resources. And this is old news to a lot of folks, but if you're young and coming up the pike here, if there's somebody comes up with some brainstorms in the future to try to limit our own populations a bit, that's going to be the best thing that's going to happen. But otherwise, I hope people come away with inspired by something, whether it's the photography or the urge to get out there and travel. I'm a big advocate of traveling. To go off the track a little bit, but not much. My favorite movie in the entire, I'm a big movie fan, I should say. I love going to the movies. I've got a big collection of them here. My favorite movie of all time is from back in the early 80s. It's called Quest for Fire. And it takes place like 80,000 years ago. There's no recognizable language used in it, which means that you can be from Ethiopia or Mongolia or Tierra del Fuego and watch this movie and still enjoy it just as much as I did. And the gist of the movie is these three cavemen, just to use a familiar term, their fire goes out through a kind of a tragedy, and they don't know how to make new fire, so they have to go out and travel the world to find fire. And it epitomizes what I love about herping, is that when you travel, you learn lots of new things. You meet new people, you see their cultures, and you see the world from the new perspectives. That also comes from having exchange students, I should mention, which another experience which I love completely. So traveling, Americans are not the boldest travelers in the world. I think some of the European countries, like Germany, stands out. Those folks, I run into more Germans when I travel than anybody else. I've got a little German blood in me myself, so maybe that's where I get the love of it too. So if you get inspired to travel and learn new things and see new things, that would be great. If you're inspired to get into photography a little heavier, that's great. If you're inspired just to join herpetological societies, which sometimes have suffered trying to keep up with all the distractions out there, but go to your local herp club like Central Valley and meet people who are like-minded and enjoy the things you do, schedule to go on some herping trips with them. Those are probably some of the biggest inspirations I would push.
Well, it's really great, and I hope to get a copy and look forward to reading it. Now, when people finish reading your book, obviously that isn't the end of Bill Love's story. It's not the end of the love story.
No,
so,
I'd like
so,
to
so
think that they'll go on for a bit yet. I still love to go out herping. I love meeting new people.
yeah.
I still go to herp meetings when I can, and I like to go to herp shows. Now living over here in the Phoenix area, I'm a lot closer to California, so I find myself over there a little more often, and that's great. California is a state full of shakers and movers for sure, and that's so just automatically. If you're from California, you've probably got it in your blood to do something a little cutting edge above what the average person's doing, and I salute Californians for being on the forefront of that through pretty much my whole life.
Now, what's next? Do you have anything yet to see, yet to do on your list before you write the final chapter, if you will? I mean, what more adventures do you have planned? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to meet?
Well, there's still some countries I'd love to see in my life. Maybe New Guinea, Sri Lanka, somewhere in the Mid East.
Hmm.
Maybe like a place like Yemen. I would love to see veiled chameleons in the
Yeah.
field. I probably have a little more trepidations about being an American over in the Mid East, but I try to look past that a lot. It's really popular nowadays to be down on like a whole country or a whole section of the country because they follow some different mindset or religion or whatever, and kind of kind of cast all those folks in a negative light. I don't believe in that. I've had too many good exchange students from places that I had to look up on a map at first to figure out where they were and realize that people are basically good from all over the world. Once you get into other people trying to control those people, that's when the negativity creeps in. But I don't think there's evil people in any country. So I'd like to visit those countries. I'm probably going to do some more writing projects. I've already got some ideas swirling in my head for the possible follow-up to the gecko smile. I'm also working on a book about encountering venomous snakes in the field with a colleague right here in the Phoenix area, tentatively titled Rattlesnakes 101, but we might come up with a better title before it actually gets published. And other than that, I'm keeping a small collection of live reptiles here, mostly native California species and mostly rattlesnakes, which I've always loved. And of course, I'm assisting Kathy with her big projects. She's got the biggest one going on are these tricolor hognose snakes. It's the genus Lystrophis from southern South America, Paraguay, Uruguay, northern Argentina. And these are going to be an exciting new project on the herpetocultural horizon here in the next few years. Kathy's having phenomenal success with them now with captive bred animals, second generation. The first eggs will probably be hatching within the next month or so. And so that's all exciting. She's got blue-tongued skinks in the works, and she's still playing with corn snakes too, just on a smaller scale than back in the old days. So I just enjoy being part of all of that. I'm a regular at our local herp meetings in Phoenix from the Arizona Herpetological Association. I'm the sergeant at arms. I'm the guy sitting by the desk back there trying to get you to pay your dues and keeping you up on what's going on. So I enjoy that every month too. I enjoy bringing cool speakers in from all over the country and even sometimes out of it. So basically, I just want to keep on doing all the stuff I've been doing all my life, and as long as I can.
The book is Reptile Odyssey: Adventures of a Herpetologically Oriented Life by Bill Love. Where can people get your book?
Oh, you can reach me on Facebook. I'm Bill Love in Apache Junction, if there's more than one Bill Love out there. Actually, years ago, there was a herper named Bill Love in the Memphis, Tennessee area because the Vivarium magazine used to mail my slides back to him by mistake. But anyway, so my Facebook site is open to anyone who wants to look at it. It's not restricted in any way. And you can get on there, or my wife, Kathy Love, also from Apache Junction, Arizona. You can order the book through us. If you do so, we will sign it personally. And the book is $29.95 plus either $8 for the priority mail, the faster postage, or $4 for the slower medium mail postage. That's within the United States, of course. I have to calculate the price. It's horrendous to send it out of the country anymore. But anyway, for those folks, I hope they can team up and get a pack of them and swap them to their friends. So the book is available from us. You can also order through Eco Publishing from Bob Ashley if you want them in wholesale quantities, which of course will not be signed.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with me. I enjoyed killing the hour with you. I appreciate you coming on to talk about it. The book is Reptile Odyssey, Adventures of a Herpetologically-Oriented Life. As he said, you can get a hold of him through his Facebook page, and I assume through his website, like he said. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Okay, Edgar, it's been a real pleasure, and get with me afterwards and give me the link so I know where to send people to listen to this.
Yeah, please share it everywhere. Thank you guys for listening. Bill Love was my guest. Again, pick up his book, Reptile Odyssey, Adventures of a Herpetologically-Oriented Life, and check that out. He will sign it and personalize it for you. Just get a hold of him. Thank you for listening. You guys have been listening to the Edgar Ortega Radio Show. My name is Edgar Ortega. If you enjoyed this program, please subscribe, and we'll have more guests like Bill Love and other people that are interesting to me. And please subscribe. Find us on Facebook. All that stuff will be in the description of this video. I'll go ahead and link Bill's Facebook page in the description, as well as all his websites, all the places appropriate to get a hold of him as well. Once again, I'm Edgar Ortega, and thank you for listening to the Edgar Ortega Radio Show.